He said, "I'll be home for dinner." That was the last time I heard my son's voice.
Deborah Rivers remembers every second of that day. The sound of the door closing. The smell of food on the stove. The football jersey tossed over the back of a chair. 6:42 p.m., that's when he left football practice. His cleats still muddy, his head full of dreams. He had plans. He was supposed to eat dinner, finish his homework, and talk about scholarship offers. But Jamal Rivers never made it home. A 17-year-old black boy disappears in a quiet Birmingham neighborhood. And no one seems to notice. Voice slows, tone more intense. No one saw a thing. No one heard a thing. Or at least, that's what they said. His backpack was found 3 days later, zipped, spotless, at the edge of a storm drain. The police said he probably ran away. The media didn't even put his name on the evening news. But his mother knew better. And for 25 years, she never stopped asking questions. Voice shifts to suspense. Now, new evidence has emerged. A hidden file. A long-forgotten witness. A truth buried by fear, silence, and maybe something darker. The case that haunted a mother, and a city, is about to be reopened. Because Jamal didn't vanish without a trace. Someone erased him. And someone is about to be exposed. This is True Crime Chapters. My son never came home, the cold case that tore a family apart. That one sentence would echo in her mind for the next 25 years. Over every dinner table. Every empty birthday. Every unanswered prayer. In the fall of 1998, 17-year-old Jamal Rivers, a promising student, a beloved teammate, a son, left football practice and never came home.
My son, he's not home. It's 10 o'clock, he never stays out this late.
His mother called the police. They took the report. But nothing happened. No search parties. No press conferences. No urgency. In a city with too many unsolved cases. Jamal was just another name. Another face. Another black teen who vanished into the shadows. There were rumors. He ran away. He got involved with the wrong crowd. But those who knew him, they knew better. Jamal didn't run. Someone took him. Years passed. The city moved on. But Jamal's mother never did. She kept asking questions, to people who didn't want to answer. She kept knocking, on doors that wouldn't open. For 25 years, no one saw a thing. No one said a word. And no one was held accountable. But the past doesn't stay buried forever. Because now, someone finally talked. Jamal Rivers wasn't just another kid from Birmingham. He was that kid, the one teachers loved, teammates rallied behind, and neighbors smiled at when he passed. Smart. Athletic. Respectful. A senior at Booker T. Washington High School. And the star wide receiver with dreams stitched into every yard he gained. They said he could make it, really make it. Coaches whispered about scholarships. A local college had already made contact. Jamal had just led his team to their biggest win of the season, the night before he vanished. At home, things were quieter, smaller. Raised by his mother, Deborah Rivers, a bakery worker, soft-spoken, always with flour on her hands. She did it all. And Jamal? He saw her sacrifices. He felt them. He carried her hopes on his shoulders like shoulder pads on the field. Everyone had something to say about Jamal Rivers. Something good. Coach Thomas, you couldn't teach that kid's work ethic. First on the field. Last to leave. He played like he had something to prove. Miss Carter, his essays always started with, "Dear Mama." I once asked why, and he said, because every word is for her anyway. Deborah and Jamal weren't just mother and son. They were best friends. Morning routines like rituals. Dinner like church. Laughter in the car. Silence when times were hard. The kind of closeness where it felt like if one stopped breathing, the other might too. The day before everything changed. Jamal was flying high. A scholarship offer had landed. He'd just won the game. His mom baked him a cake with #one son piped in frosting. That night, they laughed until their cheeks hurt. She told him she was proud. He said, "Just wait, Mama, this is only the beginning." His mother always said she felt something that afternoon. Like a thread had snapped. Like God went silent. And in that silence, she waited. For a call. For a knock. For anything. But what was coming, wasn't hope. It was horror. Thursday, September 10, 1998. Jamal Rivers left football practice at exactly 6:45 p.m. It was still warm, sun low, cicadas loud, and the streets emptying as dinner plates filled across Birmingham. His walk home. Just 12 minutes. A path he took every day. Through 3 intersections. Past the corner store. Over 2 blocks of abandoned houses. One stretch without streetlights. He should have been home by 7 o'clock. But Jamal never made it. No eyewitnesses. No security footage. No sound. No scream. Just silence. Like the earth opened up and swallowed him whole. By 8:15, Deborah was pacing. Jamal wasn't one to be late. He always called. Always. By 8:45, she was out the door. Flashlight in hand. Calling his name down cracked sidewalks and overgrown lawns. But there was no answer. At 10:06 p.m., Deborah called 911. Her voice, trembling. Her hands, shaking. She told them her son wasn't home. That it wasn't like him. That something was wrong. But they didn't hear a mother in distress. They heard a statistic. He was labeled a possible runaway before sunrise. No press release. No missing alert. Just a case number and a shrug. Because in neighborhoods like Jamal's, the missing often stay missing. But Deborah refused to wait. While officers filed reports, she made flyers. While they went quiet, she went door to door. Her voice cracking. Her hope unraveling. 3 days passed. 3 nights without sleep. And then, the rain came. It soaked the posters. It soaked the hope. And it carried something else with it. On the 4th morning, a sanitation worker cleaning a flooded storm drain found something caught in the grate. Jamal's backpack. Muddy. Torn. But unmistakably his. The discovery didn't change their tone. No signs of foul play, they said. Could have dropped it on his own, they claimed. Deborah knew better. That backpack was Jamal's world. He wouldn't leave it behind. Not willingly. Neighbors grew quiet. Friends pulled back. The more Deborah asked, the more silence she received. Something had happened to her son. And someone knew. But no one was talking. The investigation into Jamal Rivers' disappearance began, slowly. Not with urgency. Not with determination. But with doubt. No Amber Alert. No press conference. No canine search team. Just a clipboard, a file number, and a dismissive shrug. While officers dragged their feet, Deborah moved. Fast. She handed out flyers. She made calls. She begged for help. Because if she didn't search for her son, who would? She wasn't a detective. She wasn't trained. But love? Love made her relentless. Then something powerful happened. The community, tired, ignored, unseen, rose up. church groups, high school teachers, neighbors with no badges but full hearts. They organized search parties. They knocked on doors. They scoured parks, alleyways, train tracks. Together. If strangers could rally, where were the authorities? But as the weeks passed, rumors started to spread. Some whispered about gangs. Others about a police cover-up. Then came the ugliest whispers of all, that Jamal had simply run away. That maybe he wasn't the kid everyone said he was. Was it easier to blame the boy, than to search for him? 3 weeks in, Deborah stood in front of flashing cameras, trembling, exhausted, but determined.
My son is not a runaway. He is missing. And someone out there knows something.
It wasn't just a please. It was a scream into a system that refused to listen. By December, the posters had faded. The calls stopped. The officers moved on. After 3 months of silence, the case was labeled cold. No leads. No suspects. No reason to keep digging, they said. What kind of system gives up after 90 days? And what happens to families when the search ends, but the pain doesn't? The media lost interest. Cameras vanished. Headlines changed. But the Rivers family didn't. Jamal's room stayed untouched. His mother lit a candle every night. Hope refused to die. Even when the world pretended he never existed. How many mothers sit alone like this every night, asking the same question? Where is my child? The file was closed. The officers stopped calling. But for Deborah, every knock, every phone ring, still made her heart race. Because deep down, she knew Jamal hadn't run. He hadn't vanished. He had been taken. It would take 25 years, and a retired detective with nothing to prove, to find the thing everyone else missed. In 2023, Ron Carver, once with Birmingham PD, began reopening cold cases as a volunteer project. A passion project. A guilt project. He chose Jamal's case at random. Or maybe, the case chose him. Inside the file, a photograph, smudged and low-res. A partial shoe print found in the dirt, not far from the storm drain where Jamal's backpack was discovered. It had never been analyzed. Never entered into any database. Just, filed away. Why was this never tested? And what else had been left behind? Shortly after, Deborah received a call, from an old friend. Marcus Bell, a retired officer who'd served with her late husband. And what he told her changed everything.
There was a memo, internal. Said a cop's name came up in connection to the Jamal case. But it was buried. Never made it out of the department.
A possible suspect. With a badge. Shielded by silence. Deborah had waited long enough. She picked up the case again, not as a grieving mother, but as an investigator. Every box in the attic came down. Every letter, every photograph, every scribbled note from 1998 became a lead. What would you do if the people sworn to protect your child might be the ones who covered it up? She started calling old friends, teammates, former neighbors. Some had moved. Some had forgotten. Others hadn't forgotten. They were just afraid to remember. The past doesn't always want to be found, especially when it still holds power. Then, a detail buried deep in the original notes. One of Jamal's teammates, questioned briefly in '98, had a known grudge. But he was never pursued. Why? His uncle was a police sergeant. Conflict of interest, or something more? Why was the boy with a motive protected from scrutiny? In a storage bin marked Fall '98, Deborah found what the police missed, or ignored. A notebook Jamal had kept. Inside, a name scribbled over and over. Angry handwriting. Reggie D. A name never mentioned to her. A name the file barely whispered. Who was Reggie D? What did Jamal know? And why didn't the police ask more questions? Something had always felt off. Deborah knew it in her bones. And now, the cracks were showing. A discarded shoe print. An ignored suspect. A buried memo. And a mother who refused to stop digging. How deep does corruption go? And when the ones we trust to protect their own instead, who speaks for the voiceless? In spring 2024, a lab run through the Innocence Network re-examined the one piece of evidence the department had ignored for decades, that partial shoe print. Thanks to DNA preserved in microscopic debris inside the sole pattern, the breakthrough came. But whose DNA was it? And what would it reveal about what happened that night? The print belonged to none other than Sergeant Harold Dorsey, now retired. The uncle of Reggie D., Jamal's former teammate, and long-suspected rival. A man sworn to uphold the law was now accused of helping cover up the violent death of a teenage boy. Why would a decorated officer risk everything? What did he know, and what was he hiding? Under pressure, Harold Dorsey confessed to what he once helped bury. He admitted to cleaning up a scene. Blood, grass, clothing. Jamal, he said, had been hurt after an argument with Reggie. Was it a fight, or was it murder? And why didn't anyone come forward, until now? Reggie D., now 42, was arrested shortly after. Charged with second-degree murder. He had lived freely for 25 years. Married. Kids. A job. While Deborah lived in silence, raising candles and questions. How does a man walk free for a quarter century, while a mother carries the weight of a missing son? In the summer of 2024, the trial began. The courtroom was packed. Press. Protesters. Police. And at the front, Deborah Rivers, holding her son's number 21 jersey, every single day. She never missed a moment. Not the testimonies. Not the confessions. Not the silence that once drowned her cries. One by one, the truth unraveled. Former students. A coach. A neighbor. They all admitted they had heard something, seen something. But fear of retaliation, fear of the badge, had sealed their lips. How many stories die in silence, because speaking out could get you killed? Through every brutal detail, every broken truth, Deborah sat still. Stronger than grief. Fiercer than fear. Holding that jersey like a flag, like a shield, like a promise.
25 years of silence had ended. And a mother's voice, the one they ignored, was finally the loudest in the room. News crews circled. Hashtags trended. Jamal's face, once forgotten, was now everywhere. And behind every headline, one question remained. What really happened to Jamal Rivers? What is justice, after 25 years of injustice? Can any verdict undo the silence? Can any sentence bring a boy back home? But in the noise, did the truth get lost? As the story broke wide open, so did the cracks in the system. Why was Jamal's case closed in under 48 hours back then? Why weren't the original detectives ever held accountable? And you have to wonder. If there hadn't been a hashtag, would anyone have listened at all? Even now, you may be asking. Would this story be different, if Jamal didn't look the way he did? Would your community have gotten the same silence? Deborah, his mother, watched the chaos unfold, knowing the world had finally seen her son, but years too late. And still, behind the tweets, behind the press conferences, one question cut through the noise. Who killed Jamal Rivers, and who helped cover it up? But what is justice, after 25 years of injustice? Can any verdict undo the silence? Can any sentence bring a boy back home? On the morning of July 10, 2024, the jury returned with its decision. After 6 days of deliberation. After 3 weeks of testimony. After 25 years of silence. Reggie Dorsey, guilty of second-degree murder. Harold Dorsey, guilty of conspiracy and evidence tampering. Does justice delayed still count as justice? Or is it simply the truth showing up too late? Then came the moment no one could prepare for. Deborah Rivers stepped forward, years of grief in her bones, but peace in her voice, to deliver a victim impact statement heard around the world. I waited 25 years for the truth. I can finally say Jamal's name, without fear. He was my son. He mattered. And I want the world to remember him. In the days that followed, the city of Birmingham issued a formal apology to the Rivers family. A mayor who was a teenager when Jamal vanished, stood before the press with trembling hands and a pledge to reform. Too little, too late. Or the first brick in rebuilding a system that failed too many. But no gesture carried more weight than what happened one warm summer night. At Booker T. Washington High School, on the field where Jamal once ran touchdowns, a community gathered. Candles in hand. Tears in eyes. Love in full view. Some had searched for him. Some had failed him. But all came to remember him. How do we honor the lives we lose to silence, neglect, and fear? We say their names. We light candles. And we keep them burning. Jamal Rivers never made it home that night in 1998. But in 2024, the truth did. It arrived on courtroom floors, through whispered testimony, and in a mother's unbreakable voice. Justice doesn't always come on time. But when it comes, it carries more than judgment. It carries remembrance. And for Jamal, that's where the healing begins. 2 months after the verdict, Deborah Rivers did something no one expected. She didn't retreat. She built something. She launched Jamal's Promise, a foundation to help families of missing black children. Legal aid. Counseling. Awareness. Hope. What do you do when the system fails you? If you're Deborah Rivers, you build a new one. Then came the headlines. Across Alabama, and beyond, families began speaking out. About children who vanished in the 80s. In the 90s. And whose names never made the news. Was Jamal's case just one of many? How many cold cases were buried not because they couldn't be solved, but because they didn't matter to the people in charge? In response to growing outrage, lawmakers introduced new legislation in Alabama. The Cold Case Reopening Act, requiring that every unsolved case be reviewed every 10 years. Accountability was finally being written into law. But is it enough? What happens when justice becomes a trend? Will it fade, or finally take root? Online, the movement exploded. Hashtag Justice for Jamal. Hashtag Say Their Names. Hashtag Forgotten No More. His story became a symbol. Jamal's face, once lost in a filing cabinet, was now on timelines, classrooms, and Capitol steps. But what good is a hashtag if it doesn't bring someone home? And still, questions remain. Why was Jamal's case buried? Who made the call to close it? Did more officers know? Were there others involved? The official story says the case is closed. But behind the curtain, in old notebooks, erased hard drives, and forgotten back rooms, the truth may still be hiding. Is this the end of Jamal's story? Or just the beginning of something far bigger? For 25 years, Jamal's name was a whisper. Quiet. Fading. Almost forgotten. But now, it's a cry for justice. A rallying call. A name that echoes through courtrooms, candlelight vigils, and across a nation ready to listen. He never made it home. But his story did. How many stories like Jamal's were never told? How many children vanished and never got headlines, hashtags, or justice? If this story moved you, speak up. Drop a comment below. Share his name. Share their names. Because every voice, keeps another child from being forgotten. Like, share, subscribe. And remember, justice begins with the stories we choose to tell.